All right. So if you're an entrepreneur or you want to become an entrepreneur, you've probably struggled with this problem where you kind of have a hard time explaining what it is you do, or distilling the services and the value that you bring to your potential clients, distilling that message in a way that makes sense. So I was talking to my friend Jordan Edwards here recently, and he kind of had a little bit of a problem with that. He's got a lot of really cool things going on, and was having a hard time kind of bringing it all together into a powerful and cohesive message. So we're going to do something a little bit different here today. What we're going to do is we're going to do this live. We're going to walk through this situation that Jordan has with his own business, and we're going to kind of distill that down into a clear and cohesive message to help him present the value that he's bringing in and present the services that he provides in a way that makes sense to the average person, right? Because we don't have an hour to sit down and explain something to someone. We've got just a few seconds sometimes. So what we want to do is distill this down into a powerful and punchy message in a way that everybody can understand. So Jordan, let's take a second and introduce yourself. Tell people a little bit about you, what you're doing, some of the projects you've got going on.
Yeah, I'm Jordan Edwards. First of all, Jeremy, thank you for having me here.
My pleasure.
I'm Jordan Edwards, and I'm founder of Edwards Consulting. Edwards Consulting, we help people pretty much find their direction, figure out which way they want to go in different areas of life, how you can have more in life, through career focus, through physical fitness, through community involvement, relationships, spirituality, if you want to go that way, whatever works for you. We try to help you grow yourself to take on more. And I've been doing that. And then during the coronavirus, I've actually started a podcast called the Clocked In Podcast with Jordan Edwards. And we have different successful guests on. Jeremy's been on. And they talk about different, basically they tell you their story about what they've done, how they got there, and then they give tips along the way on how someone younger, or how someone just starting their career, or even a veteran in their career can learn from this and take notes and be able to get value and have a good call to action from each podcast.
Right. So that's a mouthful. That's which kind
It's
of
a lot.
highlights. Yeah, it is. It is. But I think we can get this distilled down into a clear message for you. And you've got a couple of things. So you've got that. That's a thing you're doing. You've also got in the meantime, you've got what I'll call a day job. You've got the podcast. Like, you've got a lot of different things going on. But primarily the consulting side and the podcast are what tie together in this, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
Now, there is something that's probably missing right now. We haven't really talked about it. Do you have like a group, whether it be on Facebook or LinkedIn or something like that, a group tied around this community, this concept, this idea?
I started one in January. I was pretty active in it, and then I've fallen off probably Mayish. But it's got like 65 members, which is pretty interesting.
Yeah.
It was a cool idea. I just need to get back into that.
Yeah. I don't want to go too deep on that, but that definitely is something you should be using, because then you can build a tribe of active and engaged people who view it kind of as a family, right? And then when they're engaged, they're going to be out sharing the content. They're going to be out talking about you and what you do and the value that you bring. So just tuck that in the back of your head. We don't need to really dig too deep into that for now. But when we do something like this, when we try to distill a message, or take something from scratch and basically build it into something, the first thing we want to look at is why, right? So everyone has a reason that they're doing something. For me, I was always very good in art. I was always very good in creative things, so I kind of naturally gravitated towards marketing. But one of the big catalysts for me in starting a business was I saw a company that had worked with this big, expensive New York agency. This was back in the late 90s. And they came in and they spent, I want to say it was like $250,000 for their website, which was, I mean, that's a lot of money anytime, but that's a lot of money. That's an insane amount back then. But basically they did everything wrong, right? It was a site that looked decent, but the search engines couldn't see it. It was difficult to navigate. There was all kinds of problems. And that was a big problem in the marketing industry, and it still is today, where a lot of people are doing things wrong and the clients are suffering because of that. So for me, that was part of my why, is coming in to kind of change how things were. I mean, I can only do what I can do, but one more company out here to do the right thing to offset some of the shitty ones that are doing the wrong thing, right? So I have to suspect that there's some kind of why behind your direction, right? Is that the case?
Yeah, absolutely. For
All right.
me, my why is I went to the University of Tampa, and my junior year, I got this internship, and it was I remember my 21st birthday with my dad. We were cheersing, hoping that I'd get this internship that would turn into a job at this
Okay.
big corporation. And as soon as I got there, starting off at the job, I realized this isn't the best fit for me. There's got to be more out there. So I started doing work with myself. I started doing this personal development world. I started reading different books, seeing different theories. And I realized that in society, everyone places this, they basically place ourselves in a box of like, you got to get this job, you got to be the CEO, and you got to be successful. And that's what success is. But why can't success be whatever you want it to be? And that's what I try to help people with at Edwards Consulting, kind of opening their eyes to what there is in the world and what there can be.
Okay. So you feel like you were, whether pushed or just kind of drifted down the path that was maybe not right for you initially.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. I mean, this is from society, from
Mhm.
my parents. It was all just, you got to get that job and you'll be happy once you have the job. And I just wasn't that happy with the job. I'm still doing the job, but I'm not the happiest with the job. So,
Right. And that's not an uncommon thing, right? Like we've all got these bullshit expectations. Oh, go. It used to be, you go somewhere, you work there for 20 years and you retire, right? Well, you're not old enough to remember this, but during the dot-com bubble, people were hopping jobs like several times a year, right? And that whole thing just got shot out of the water. So there's all of these expectations that people have, and we have to really figure out what's right for us. So it sounds like you're trying to help people do that. um, Let me ask you this: what kind of problems did those expectations have for you, right? Because your why goes deeper than just why you're doing it, but we also want to look at what impact did the wrong choices leading up to that have on you.
for me, I felt kind of like not like a wasted time, but I didn't realize early enough. I wasn't awakened early enough to these other world of opportunities. I felt that if you had a business, you had to go do the brick and mortar, and you had to open up shop, and you had to collect all this money, and it never made sense to me. But then once I realized what business was and what that opportunity is, my eyes kind of opened up a little more, and that you can build the life that you desire and the one you want, because we don't have that much time on this planet, and we have to try to do what we can to make us
Absolutely.
happy.
Yeah, and you touched on a good point there, right? So, you talked about different paths and different opportunities and whatnot, and I think a lot of people have this false A or B, right? Like it's either you go and you take this stable, secure job at a company, or you go and you struggle and have all kinds of problems. A lot of people in my family, I always heard, oh well, 90 something percent of businesses fail, or whatever the bullshit stat is. Um, but the reality is, your stable, secure job is not a fucking stable, secure job either, because that company could go out of business too. So like there's no such thing. There's this myth built around stability and security, and it just doesn't exist.
Yeah, and people do that so that they feel comfortable. I
Right.
think people, because they don't want to take the responsibility of, I have to make the money for myself. They want to put it on, oh, the company has to do it for me. And we're trading a lot of time and money for that, which is not what I want to do. I want to
Right.
do something a little bit different than that.
Okay. So you were kind of led by everybody, family, society, school, you name it, kind of down the wrong path. And when you got into what was supposed to be the pinnacle of your life at that point, right?
Yeah.
You found that you were unhappy. You found that you weren't doing things that you enjoyed. and you felt like you were missing opportunities because you weren't really doing what you loved, right? So are we all on the same path so
Absolutely.
far? Okay,
Absolutely.
cool. All right. So then your why will actually go a little bit deeper than that. And that is not just that's why you're here, but now let's look at why do you exist as a business?
To empower people to pretty much open up their eyes that there are opportunities.
There you go. Absolutely. So you're helping them to avoid all of those problems, all of those mistakes, the wrong path, the missed opportunities, the feeling unfulfilled or unhappy in their job. So your why is that you're solving that particular problem for those people.
Yeah.
All right.
That's
So
genius. Yeah.
now we've got that nailed down. So now let's talk about your what. So what exactly is it that you're doing for your clients? How are you going about the things that you're doing?
Yeah. So when I meet with them, first of all, we have an introductory session. And in that session, we take a baseline. And the reason for the baseline is because you have to, first of all, you have to show how far they've come. You have to show, here's where you started, here's where you are now. Look at that distance, because no one checks themselves.
Mhm.
No one, no, like you could live your life and what happened in the past 2 years. So many things happen, but you can just go, yeah, I got a job promotion. That's all that happened in your career. Like that doesn't make sense. There's so much more that happened. There were ups and downs and all of that. So if you do a baseline with them, it helps them figure out their ideas, and we do it based on mental, physical, community involvement, relationships, and that can be significant other, or that could be networking, whatever that is, or a friend group or whatever. And then we do spirituality. So you have a baseline on all of those, and then you see where you want to improve. And we figure out 3 habits that they can accomplish in those 8 weeks, whatever
Okay.
that is. Some people are, I want to get into an MBA.
Mhm.
I want to run a half marathon. I want to start my business. Whatever that goal is, we do
Okay.
that. And then through that, you have that first meeting, and there's always actionable steps for them to take at the end of each meeting.
Let's back
So,
up for 1 second. What were
yeah.
the bullet points you said there? Mental, physical. I missed one. There was
Yeah.
spirituality.
Mental, physical, community involvement. So community service, philanthropy, relationships, which is networking, friend groups, significant other, and then the last one, spirituality. So there's 5 of them that Edwards Consulting holds.
Beautiful. All right. So then you're following a documented process to deal with all of these specific things,
Yeah.
right?
Those are the
Beautiful.
pillars, yeah,
Okay.
that I
Beautiful.
believe are important, that should be checked on so that you know where you're at.
Okay. Great. And then let's talk a little bit about the process for each of these. We don't need to go specifically deep into them, but let's jump on, I don't know, pick one, whichever one really gets you fired up the most. Let's dig through that for a second.
Yeah, so I mean, you'll hop in and whatever one you want. So when we go through them, I have a scale of a 1 to 10,
Hmm.
and that I created, and through that scale, I go to the people and we go 1 to 10, and basically we do 3 or 4 whys. So I'll do the 1 to 10, and let's say it's physical.
Hmm.
What do you think your 1 to 10 on your physical is? Whatever number, just
In
say.
terms of like, are you where you want to be?
Yeah, I mean,
Okay.
physically fit, fitness. What do you think you're at?
Me personally,
Yeah,
uh, let's say, let's say
just theoretical. Yeah,
health issues aside, which we
yeah,
talked about in your podcast,
yeah.
I would say ignoring that, probably a 7, maybe 8.
7, 8, and
Yeah.
then we'll go why, and you'll give me reasons why you think you're a 7 or an 8,
Okay.
and then we'll go why even further, and you come to this whole thing of like, is this really what? And then we'll do a goal of like, what's a 10 look like, so you can figure out where that distance gap is. What's a 10? Does
Okay.
that mean you have a 6-pack? And you figure out, because basically what it is, it's helping people have self discovery of what they really want and where they're really at.
Right. Now, do you
And
also go further back and say, like, here's where you are now, here's where you want to be, but do you dig back and say, you know, 10 years ago, 5 years ago, whatever, where were you then? And do you also look at things like, you know, you're 7 years old. What did you dream you'd be like in this area of your life? Like, you look at those details as well?
usually we go from where you're at forward, because
Yeah.
I want them focusing on the future. Sometimes the past, I mean, sometimes we'll bring up the past, like,
Hmm.
hey, I had a really tough time with this, and that's why I'm insecure with, like, let's say it's fitness. I'm insecure with fitness or whatever it is. Um, I don't know. Everyone's got their own thing.
Sure.
But yeah, that's sometimes we'll discuss that, but I don't push that per se.
Okay. Well, just stick that in the back of your head. That could be useful,
Yeah,
because all of
definitely.
us as kids, we've got these various ideas in our head, and sometimes they're good, sometimes they're bad, but we've got these ideas of what we want our life to look like as kids. But then through the bullshit that we get in school, through the bullshit that we get from society, a lot of that just gets squashed down. So, that side of things is definitely worth looking at. But I like how you've got the 5 pillars. You've got a documented process. What are you doing for measuring this? What kind of KPIs are we looking at? Is it just gut feel, or is there something quantifiable behind it?
So what I like to do is after that, so we'll start off with it depends on who it is, but we'll usually go 5-year goals,
Mhm.
and they tell me everything from I want to be married, I want to be making this much money, I want to have a house here, whatever it is. I go, let's be outrageous. Let's just really be crazy. And that gets them in a good state. Then we'll do 1-year goals. And then after I do the filler of the different pillars, then we'll go, what's an 8-week goal that can help you achieve your 1-year goal? And those 8 weeks, we get 3 of those. And over the 8 weeks, we accomplish them. And we'll work towards those. So, for example, one person said, I don't think I can do a half marathon. I go, you can. You absolutely can. And that's just his accomplishment. So that's what we're working towards. Or one person, whatever it is, like one person wanted to book an international vacation. It's just anything, because a lot of it's them being uncomfortable because they've never done it before.
Mhm.
So if I've experienced it, or I've had a client who has experienced it, or I've had a friend who's experienced, I can help you to get that done.
Okay. All right. So we've got some degree of quantifiable metrics that we can look at. So it's not just like, hey, how do you feel about this? Touchy feely
Yeah.
feelings. None of that
Yeah.
shit. Okay, good, good. So the process is documented. There's solid KPIs. The next thing we need to look at is kind of how we're presenting this. So what we've covered so far is we've covered your why, your what, and your how. Now, the cool thing about this is you can talk specifically about your how. You can give out as much information about it as you want, and you're not going to lose anything, right? You've seen some of my content. Like, I break shit down to a level where if somebody wanted to, they could go and just pour through my various podcasts and videos and articles, and they could learn and do this stuff themselves and have no need for me. The
Yeah.
reality is most people, they don't want to do that, right? People are
Yeah.
coming to me because they want the experience. They don't have the time to do it. They want me to handle it. They want my agency to do that for them, whatever. All of these things. So in your case, you can give away all of this information, but people are still going to come to you because, well, there's a variety of reasons. One, you have experience doing this, right? You have helped people to solve these problems. So they want it. And this is why I say, to some degree, self-help is bullshit.
Yeah.
Because if you could help yourself, you'd already fucking be where you want to be, right? So most people, they lack the discipline to go the self-help approach, right?
Yeah.
Now, a lot of people, they can go with a coach, with a consultant, some kind of person to help guide them. And then once they get on track, they can go and do things themselves. Now, that being said, I do think all of us, regardless of where we are in life, I think we all need coaches and consultants in various areas of our life, right? I see a therapist. I think everyone should see a therapist. They have insights into how our minds work that we don't. Um, Coaches in various aspects of business. I have a lot of different types of coaches. I spend an ungodly amount of money each year on that kind of stuff. It's 5 figures. It's well
Yeah.
into 5 figures. So this is the kind of thing that the people who value it, they will still, no matter how much information you give away. And the reality is you can never give away enough information because you're always learning, right?
Yeah.
So you can take your how and you can break this down and start talking specifically about how you're handling certain things. You could even make the client anonymous, but you can talk about a particular situation. Just be very careful how you frame it, that you're not making it clear in any way who they are. But you can show exactly how you walked through that process and helped them and what the outcome was.
Yeah.
So what we've got here is we've got the why, we've got the what, and we've got the how. I think you've done a great job of explaining it so far. So what we need to do here now is look at how we position this. So let's look at more public figures. Is there somebody in the world, and I have a few in my head, is there somebody in the world, whether it's a person or a company, that's doing something similar to what you feel that you're doing, regardless of how other people perceive what you're doing? Do you feel like there's somebody who's doing something similar?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, throw me a few names out.
I'd say, yeah, I mean, Tony Robbins, he does the whole modeling.
That was the name that was sitting right at the top of my tongue.
Yeah, I mean, I look like I want to do that. I love that. He's helping people, he's changing lives, touches on all pillars of life. He's an obvious one. I mean, there's a lot of different people in this area. Jay Shetty's kind of hopping into it.
Oh, really? You
You
think
don't
so?
think so? I don't know.
So, did you hear about the controversy about him a while back?
No.
He is plagiarist a word? If it is, that's what he is. There was this big controversy, I think it was like about a year ago, where he had been sharing all of these, powerful, inspirational quotes all over, YouTube and Instagram.
Yeah.
And then it turns out that none of them were
Yeah.
his. He just
Really?
copied that shit from everybody. And, there was a big controversy. He was getting hammered on Facebook for a while. And then, of course, he was partnered with Facebook. So they squashed that shit down. They didn't want to get sucked into that. So any negative comments about him were just getting brushed down. I like some of the things he says, but the things he says generally don't appear to be actually his.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that at all.
Yeah.
That's kind of an eye opener.
It is. You should Google it. It's an interesting story. It was a case study in crisis PR.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it was a shit show.
Yeah, I'll definitely check that out.
Tony Robbins is a solid one, though. I definitely support that one. Any other names that we can look at?
I mean, a lot of the people who are influencing, Lewis Howes, he does a similar thing. Ed Milet's pretty similar. I mean, Ed Milet made his money differently, but now he does coaching with people.
Okay.
He made his money through blanking on the name, but it was some company where you bring in financial advisors.
Okay.
And then you build it up.
There's one that I'm thinking of. I'm trying to look him up right now. Gary John Bishop.
Gary John Bishop. Who?
He had a book called Unfuck Yourself.
Oh, I did hear about this guy. I don't know much about him, but I saw his books and all of that stuff. I don't know too much about him.
Okay. You should look into him. He's a great author. I've met him a couple of times. Also have his audiobooks. Sounds like you're getting like self-help from a vulgar Lucky Charms leprechaun. It's fucking amazing. But Tony Robbins, I think, is a name that everybody knows. So let's look at that. So you're kind of in this realm. You and I talked about it before the video.
Yeah.
You're in this realm where we've kind of got this like line right down the middle.
Yeah.
You're either going to be somebody awesome like Tony Robbins.
Yeah.
Or on the other side of that line, we have the douchebags, right?
Yeah.
The people who call themselves life coaches and things like that, right? It's a meaningless term. So we have to look at how we make sure that we end up on the right side of that line, right? So right out of the gate, if you're not presenting this the right way, people are going to be like, oh, so you're a life coach, right?
Yeah.
Because that was what you and I talked about as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we definitely want to avoid that. We want to eliminate that from the vocabulary entirely. So
Yeah.
let's look at what it is that you're actually doing, because by all standards of the definition, you could be put in that category.
Yeah.
So what is it that you're really doing? Like, are you coaching someone on their life? I say no.
Yeah.
Is there a way, knowing what we've talked about so far, knowing that we want to steer very clear from the life coach world, is there any words that kind of pop out for you as far as what it is you do in a distilled compact form?
One of the words I've thought about is, because when you think about it, like, we have the plan, yes, we have the 8 weeks. A
Mm-hmm.
big part of it is the accountability and holding people to that. So I've looked into the self mastery
Mm-hmm.
as a potential avenue. Yeah. Is there anything that comes to mind for you?
There is. And I like self mastery. I don't know if that's the word, but we can definitely make a note of that to be used somewhere.
Yeah.
But something that really comes to my mind, and let's look at it not from the word, but let's back up a few steps. So
Yeah.
let's say you work with somebody,
Okay.
you go through all of the 5 pillars, you go through getting mental dialed in, getting physical, community, relationships, spirituality, all these things are dialed in, right? So you took them from, just for the sake of argument, let's say you take them from 5s to 9s in
Yeah.
all of these areas. And you guys, and you both, they and you agree that where they are now is relatively a fair bet to say 9, right?
Yeah.
What does that do for their life as a whole? Tell me, the guy's working in we'll just say a dead end job, or a job that he feels is dead end compared to what he thinks his potential is. And that's where he's at a 5. Now he's at a 9. So describe to me what his life looks like. And you can use an example of a specific client if you have somebody in mind.
Yeah. One of my clients, he actually gave me, he only had $400 left in his bank account, and he gave me, like, when I was just starting out, he paid me $50 for that first hour. And obviously the rates have changed, but that was the
Sure.
first hour. And he paid me because he believed in me. And ever since that, a year and a half later, he now works at Pepsi.
Okay.
He's been promoted twice, and he's really got a game plan for where he wants to go. So to me, part of it is unlocking their true potential, but part of it's also changing the trajectory of their life
Uh-huh.
in different ways, because um, a major element of it, like, I always thought it was funny because when I was a kid, I always looked at parents and I always thought they knew what they were doing. But you realize you realize that couldn't be further than the truth. There's so many people that never get out of this. Like, they never have that kick in the butt to say, hey, you got to grow up and you got to figure out your direction. And I'm providing them direction.
Yes, I love it. So let's back up a little bit. So let's say, I assume you're still in touch with the guy, yeah?
Yeah, I met with him
Okay.
on Monday.
Okay. So what what difference do you think there is in his income, for example? Do you have that answer by any chance? Like percentage wise, not dollar amount.
Well, before he was unemployed.
Okay.
No, he was literally, he graduated college, was living at home, like, unemployed, and now he's making, I don't know the exact figures because we haven't looked at it recently, but it's got to be around 60K, 70K, like, based
Okay.
on the hourly wage, bonuses, and all of that stuff. I
Okay.
mean, it is a tuplet, like, increase, because the first time we were meeting, I was teaching him how to reach out to recruiters and get a job,
Okay.
because that's what he wanted, and that's what his golden life looked like.
Okay. So let's look at mental. Describe to me the difference in mental state between then versus now.
Oh, he's got confidence. He knows what's going on. He has belief in himself. He feels empowered. And
And then that leads to what?
Better fitness.
Well, better
What do you
fitness
mean?
as well. Well, yeah, that's one thing. But now if you're confident and you believe in yourself and you're optimistic, now you're going to look at bigger goals, right?
Absolutely.
You're
And
going to
now we're
jump into bigger relationships. You're going to do all kinds of things that you wouldn't have done before, right?
absolutely.
And then of course that touches into multiple areas, right? Now, if you feel
Yeah.
good, you're going to exercise, and then you exercise, you feel good, and this is this cycle, right? So you
Yeah.
create this trajectory, and you mentioned trajectory before, but you're creating this trajectory, but overall, from a holistic perspective, you're improving his performance in all areas of life.
Yeah.
So I like the self mastery, but that's a small segment of it, right? That's self mastery. When I think of self mastery, and I'm curious if you think the same way, when I think of self mastery, I look at that from a discipline perspective,
I thought the
right?
same thing. Yeah,
Okay.
I thought the same thing.
Okay. So I feel like that's a component. That's not the bigger picture, but that is a component, and it is something that you definitely want to leverage in your marketing, in your messaging. Um, Trajectory, I think, gets you closer to where you want to be. But I think what you're doing, is anything coming to your mind yet as far as like how we describe this?
I mean, we're kind of I I don't want to say slingshot, like that's not a good word because you're not going backwards to go. I mean, but you are. You're taking a moment and you're looking at where you are and it is kind of slingshotting. Like they are going backwards to go forwards.
I don't think that
Um,
they're going backwards though. I mean, you're gonna
they're
sit
really
down.
not. Yeah.
No, you're gonna sit down for what? Maybe an hour, 2 hours
Yeah.
a week, something like that, a couple times a month.
Yeah.
I don't think you're going backwards. Here's what I'm seeing. I'm
Yeah.
curious if you're curious of your thoughts, that you're more inside the business. But
Yeah.
I mean, and we've only talked about this really to this level of detail. This is the first time we've talked about this to this level of detail.
Yeah.
But here's what I'm seeing. I'm seeing this as, I think a good way to describe this would be more like a performance coach, a performance consultant of some sort, because you're basically helping them improve all of these areas of their life, which then creates a cyclical pattern where they then continue to follow this trajectory up.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it definitely, yeah, because it covers all the areas. It helps. Yeah, you're increasing everyone's performance.
Yeah,
We're making you a more effective person.
absolutely. So I think that's the direction that we go with this is and I don't yet know if the word is performance coach, and I think it's coach. I'm not sure if it's performance coach or performance consultant.
Yeah.
Um, but I think one of those two is the path with this, because then you're that combined with the messaging, and we can come up with some kind of a tagline here in a little bit, but that's conveying to everybody, that's going to mean something different, right?
Yeah.
For one person, that might mean somehow becoming more productive. For someone else, that might mean getting better at engaging in their personal relationships. For someone else, it might mean improving their fitness, right? Performance is going to be different to everybody, but there's going to be some element of all of those five pillars that are going to matter to everyone. But for most people, it's going to be one of those things really stands out as a problem area for them.
Absolutely.
So when you're making it, and we're avoiding, of course, the douchey term life coach, which
Yeah.
means nothing and turns most people off. But if we call it a performance coach, right out of the gate, someone's going to think, well, what areas do I have in my life that I'm not performing where I'd like it to be? And now you've
Yeah.
primed that pump. You've got them asking the question in their own head. So you're kind of setting the stage for the following conversation. Does that
I
make
love
sense?
that. Yeah, I absolutely love that. It makes total sense and this has provided a lot of clarity. I like this a lot.
Awesome. All right. So let's talk a little bit about the tagline. So, and when I say tagline, I don't necessarily mean something that's going to be used, like next to your logo or something like that. I'm just talking of how you describe it to somebody. So I'll give you an example. So there's a service that we've been doing. It's something that we've always done, but indirectly.
Yeah.
Um, and now we're kind of repackaging it and pitching it from the front end. So Here, I'll give you an example. So we had a client that he had taken over for the started off as, I think he started off as the I don't know, somewhere in the operations side. I forget exactly where he started. Ended up then working up to chief operating officer, and then eventually worked his way up to CEO. Now, he was in an industry, and this was all in the span of about a year or so. He was in an industry where he had no experience other than the roughly 1 year or so in that company. Had no real connections, had no real relationships, no authority, no nothing. But what we were doing is we were doing all kinds of stuff with search and social for him to drive customers to the site. Well, as a byproduct of that, right? So if we're doing SEO for a client, that means we're generally going to go publish articles on other websites in that person's name, right? We're getting those published so that we're getting that link from that site back to his site.
Yeah.
But the byproduct of that is now he's being seen as an expert on this topic in all these other websites. We go out and we get him on podcasts. We get him on the news. We get him on the radio. And what that did was it turned him in. So initially, it was just driving awareness for the company, driving customers to the company. But over time, it turned him into an authority. So I think it was last year, it was in 2019. We were actually up in Washington, D.C. with him. He was up here lobbying Congress to have certain laws changed. So he went from basically being nobody to now he's up here lobbying Congress. And this was a byproduct of what we were doing. That wasn't the end goal. It wasn't to make him into a famous person within his industry. It was just, here's all these things we're doing to drive customers to the site. But the outcome was now he's authoritative. Now he's an expert and he's recognized. So we recently had been packaging that as a service to basically turn someone into an authority within their industry. Now, obviously, they have to actually be an authority. They have to be an expert. They have to know what they're doing. We're not going to take some schmuck who hasn't, done anything and can't actually deliver. So when I describe this to people, what I say is, something along the lines of, well, we turn people like you into authorities in their industry so that when they're talking to potential customers, they have that trust and that awareness that they can close the sale more easily and at a higher price. So I've taken that whole big description, the story that I just told you, and turned it into a sentence in a way that is clear and easy to understand. So what we want to do is the same thing for you, is come up with something clear and concise like that, where we take this whole package of what you're doing and roll it into a sentence.
I love it.
So is there something that jumps out in your mind yet? Anything popping into your head?
Edwards Consulting, performance coach.
Not that. You want to use
No, I know. Yeah, I'm thinking.
But here's what I'm saying. When you talk about this, you want to say I, right? Because there's that personal connection. If we say such and such company, well, that's this faceless entity over here. If we say I, well, that's the person standing right in front of them talking to them, or the person on the other end of the phone. So it means more to them.
I feel like saying this would be too much. If I say I will change the trajectory of your life, I think that's too far.
Well, it's not too far, but it's too vague.
Okay. Level up. No, I will.
So something like this. So what I do is I take people like you and walk them through. So it's not you doing it. You're just their guide, right?
Yeah.
You're not the hero here. They're the hero. You're just along to kind of tell them to turn this way and turn that way.
Yeah.
Right? So when you try to make yourself the hero, it turns people off.
The wrong,
right.
The wrong perspective.
So what you could say is,
I take people like you.
Yeah. I take people like through. Yeah, that was what it was. Thank you. So I take people like you and I walk them through a 5-step process to help them get clarity on what they really want out of life, or let me think. Nope. To help them get back on the path to where they really want to go in life. All right, read that back to me. I want to see how it sounds.
I take people like you and I walk them through a 5-step process to help them get on the path where they really want to go in life. Where they want to go. So I take people like you and walk them through a 5-step process to help them get on the path where they want to go in life.
It's not quite there,
but it's close. Definitely close.
Close.
I take people like you and walk them through a 5-step process to help them realize the path they need to be on.
No, because that makes it sound like you're giving them the path. You're basically
okay.
clearing the path for them. So
5-step process
to help them see the path to where they really want to be, or where they really want to go, something like that.
So we have, I like removing life. So I take people like you and walk them through a 5-step process to help them see the path where they want to go.
The path to where they
want to go.
To where they truly want to be, to where they really want to be, go. Yeah, I think go. Yeah, stick with go, because there's this weird thing in the human brain where if we talk about a static thing, right? So if we say be, that means you're at a place, right?
Yeah.
When we talk about a static thing, people tune out a little bit. And that comes from, our evolution. Like, when we were out wandering around cavemen and, you'd see something moving, that was potentially danger. If something's not moving, like a rock, then it's probably not dangerous. So people tend to ignore the things that are static. It's when we can introduce movement, whether it's visibly, like hand gestures in our head and whatever, or in our words. So if we can work movement into that. So rather than saying where they want to be, we say where they want to go. We're now verbally introducing movement into that statement.
Yeah, I like that. And then at that point, when it's go, we can continue on that path together. So it's not the one-time meeting. So we're meeting multiple times and they continue meeting on.
Absolutely. All right. So read that sentence to me one more time.
So I take people like you and I walk them through a 5-step process to help them see the path to where they really want to go.
I like it. How do you feel about it?
I love it. Simple, easy, gets the point. It's not all this mumbo jumbo.
Right. No buzzwords.
No one's assuming what it is. This is what it is, and I guide you.
Yeah.
And if you're willing to go, well, let's ride.
There you go. Now, on the delivery of that, if you're delivering this to someone in person, I take people like you. Get that nice pause. Get that eye contact. You're connecting. You get a good second or two pause and then continue on with it. Go ahead and try that.
Let me get it up.
Yep.
So I take people like you and walk them through a 5-step process to help them see the path where they really want to go. Yeah, I like that. I take people like you and walk them through a 5-step process to help them see the path where they really want to go.
Yes. Let's tweak how you're pronouncing you just a little bit. You've got the pause nailed down, but we want to say it a little bit differently. So I take people like you.
Oh, like
you kind of, I take people like you. I take people like you. So you're kind of bringing it up a little bit.
Emphasis, yeah.
Yeah, you don't want it to be monotone.
Okay.
Yeah, and make sure you make eye contact with them when you're doing that.
Okay. And do you do you like that?
You can. I mean, that's going to come down to personal preference, right?
Yeah,
like when
of
I
course.
talk, I mean, you saw the picture from my last event. My hands are, all over the place as my microphone can get knocked over here now.
You're good.
Yeah, my hands are all over the place, and that's good. In fact, not to go too far off of the topic, but when you can open, if you're presenting and you have open hands, that's another one of these brain tricks, right? Because when you can see open hands, there we go. Can't quite see it because it's down there, but open hands shows, it creates a subconscious pattern where we recognize that we're safe because there's no fists, there's no
Yeah.
weapons, there's no nothing. It's just open hands.
Yeah.
That's where the handshake came from, right? It was people doing this to show that they didn't have weapons in their hands. So if you can deliver this with, whether it's one hand or two, in that case I would use one, kind of do like the the old Marine Corps, not quite a knife hand, but it's out, it's gesturing towards them, but with a palm up. Then you're gonna create that sense of safety, especially if you're making eye contact while doing that.
Yeah. So let's run that through.
Go for it.
So I take people like you and walk them through a 5-step process to help them see the path where they really want to go.
Yeah. Just work on the delivery a little bit. I would practice that, get it into to where it's natural, and it'll come more naturally to you when you know that, just like right off the top of your head, when you know that you're not going to have to stare at the screen to try and read it.
Yeah. No, it becomes more organic. I completely agree.
Absolutely. So I would definitely practice on that. Now from there, they're probably going to ask you some additional questions, and then from there you can just dig. I mean, that's going to depend on what they ask, but you can dig into whatever direction you want to go from there. But now you've got it distilled, you've got a clear message that engages them on a personal level and makes them feel safe.
I love it. And when they start asking the question after the tagline, now they're just diving in because they're interested.
Yeah.
They understand what the purpose is, and they go, so what are you doing? How are you doing this? And then you can dive into it all, which
Absolutely.
is perfect, because then you're on the, come here, I will help you, I will guide you.
Exactly. So, and once they start asking questions, I'm going to assume you've got a pretty strong sales background, given that you're your day job. So, I suspect you know where to take it from there.
Yeah.
And there are certain ways that you can kind of pull, because if they're asking a question, as
of course,
but maybe some of our listeners don't know, if they're asking you a question from that point, then that means they genuinely have a need, right? So you're gonna, if they ask you, oh, like, well, how do you do that? You might say, well, it's an interesting question. Happy to answer that. Listen, can you tell me, is there an area that you're trying to improve in your life that maybe we can use that as an example or something like that? Or I can tell you how I've done that for somebody. And what you're doing is you're pulling something out, but you're also connecting it to them personally.
Yeah, they're giving you the access to go in.
Right.
And really, and figure out what you listen, and you figure out what their actual issue is. And then you go, I'm your guy. I'm the unique heroic identity. And you just tell them that. And then you go, why not? It's time.
There you go.
Jeremy, you're the man.
I do what I can. All right. So for anyone who happens to be watching this after the fact, how can people get a hold of you, Jordan?
Yeah, so they can find me on Instagram, which is going to be Jordan F. Edwards. That's it. And then people can also go on my website, edwardsfinancialconsulting.com. You could find my calendar on there, and you could just book a intro session where we just talk to you and we figure out if this is a good fit for both of us. And that's completely free of charge.
Love it. And you got a podcast too.
Oh, yeah. You can definitely find me on the Clocked In podcast. Jeremy's is going to drop soon, so hope you guys can come over and see it. Yeah, and that's just hashtag Clocked In on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you look, you will find it. And there's always super insightful stuff on there.
Yeah, I think we should, my pleasure. We should talk about that podcast for a second, because I think the people who have watched up to this point would probably be very interested in that podcast, because the type of people who are on it are very much aligned with what we've been talking about. Like, they've had really interesting lives and they've gone through some challenging things or accomplished major feats that other people would not necessarily be able to accomplish. So talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, absolutely. So the people we've had on we've had Ron Jaworski. These are the ones that are live right now. There's obviously a ton that are in the archives, but a lot of them are like, we have Ron Jaworski. He's the football player, and everyone thinks, oh my God, he's just a football player. No, he owns 6 golf courses, and he talks about that entire story. We have some of Jeremy's friends. Jeremy's going to be on it, but we have Matt Andrews. He reinvented the entire way people are doing real estate. He made real estate a remote game when everyone thought it was an in-person game.
Absolutely.
And he explains that entire story on there. That one's going to drop soon. Mike Calhoun, he talks about his entire life story and how he's got into the board of advisors point. And you get to hear these stories and these successes of very, very successful people. And it's pretty amazing because they give you the tips on how to do it. So,
Yeah.
and I extract that out from them. And throughout the podcast, you just have your notepad with you and you'll learn what you need to do, and it will take you to that next level. And that's an easy access point to get to me, because you'll get to learn about who I'm trying to connect with and who I am connecting with.
I love it. And I definitely encourage everyone to check that out. It's a great podcast, not just because I'm on there, but no, all kidding aside, there's so much wisdom on those episodes. And this really all ties back to, what started this all. I mean, you are basically a performance coach, and these people are giving your audience tips to shortcut to just boost their performance and get so much more out of life. So I think it's incredibly valuable podcast. I've listened to a ton of the episodes. Haven't listened to Matt's and Mike's yet, but looking forward to seeing when those drop. But the ones that I've listened to that are already up are just absolutely filled with wisdom that, we all can use to get more out of life.
Thank you, Jeremy. I appreciate that. And it's been a pleasure being on.
Always. All right, everybody. That's a wrap for today. I encourage you guys to drop a comment. If you have any questions, drop a comment in the YouTube here below. Hit that subscribe button if you haven't already, and go check out Jordan's podcast. It's fucking awesome. All right. Thanks, everyone.